Welcome to Your Wealthy Self with me, Regina Martinelli. This show is about money and a whole lot more. Here we focus on you being able to expand your capacity for money, success, abundance, and inner wealth. For you to have what's most important to you inside and out, so you too can be your wealthy self. It's about honoring your wholeness, that you are enough, just as you are, to have what's most important to you. And what's important to you might be the freedom to have more success, have more money without guilt or shame, or maybe it's the ease in being unapologetically you, with more certainty in your sense of purpose, or feeling daily joy and fulfillment in yourself. Whatever it is that is most important to you, whatever it makes you feel like you are wealthy inside and out, that's what we're about on this show. Because we stand in, you can create whatever it is that is important to you, and you can do it without struggle. You can do it with ease and certainty and fulfillment. We do all of this through the lens of money, right? Woohoo! But why money? Money is a spiritual highlighter. I know that's a new thought. Some of you may be doubtful, but it is. Because money reveals how you engage with the world, how much you will allow yourself to have, and how easily you will allow yourself to have it. Because we will never allow ourselves to have more than we believe we deserve, especially subconsciously. Money actually helps us to highlight how much you struggle or how much struggle you subconsciously believe you need in order to deserve your money or your success. And often when we don't feel worthy of our success that we desire, we will actually augment our worth. We will compensate for it. We'll try to add to it by creating more struggle in our lives. This is where you hear people say things like, I'm successful and I sacrificed a lot to get here, but it was worth it. Or they'll say things like, you have to work hard for more money, or you have to put in your time. There's no pain, no gain. Now, none of these notions are actually the truth. And if you believe you have to work hard for your money, then you will have to work hard for your money. It is not a truth that hard work actually equals money. In this show, because if it was, then our nurses and our teachers and our mothers would be the 1%ers. So in this show, we are revising these beliefs so you can have more of what's important to you with more ease, certainty, freedom, and fun. So you can get rid of the struggle. You can take the struggle out. This may not be, this may be new to you, may not be new to you, but this is what we look at. And today, we're going to go over, we're going to dig into stepping onto a bigger stage of yourself. And this may not be an actual stage like public speaking and doing all that, but rather a bigger version of yourself than you have known before or have been willing to be before. Yet secretly, maybe you've wanted to be this other version of yourself, this more expanded version, this more confident, more certain person. Or maybe you've envied others who have this ability to do so. And we're going to talk about the fear that happens. Because I, too, have had this fear of getting on a bigger stage of myself at different times in my life for different reasons. And when I say fear, I mean the sensations that wreak havoc in our body, like stress, anxiety, overwhelm, of not knowing what to do, or the confusion, if you even want to get on a bigger stage and what that will mean and the responsibility. All of that noise in our head. You know, when you may have the experience of starting something and you stop, then you start again, you stop. You're like, oh, I'm not sure if I can go forward with this. It's that freezing up around taking steps to get closer to that bigger version of you, that bigger stage. Not to mention the voices that say you can't do it, that you're not good enough, you're not capable, all those things. And then you add in a layer of what it means to be seen, like exposed, basically. It might feel like you'll be a target, which sets all of the alarm bells off in your reptilian brain, whose job is there to protect you and make sure that you survive. And so it makes you want to retreat from this path. It's all super common. It's something that does happen. And so we're going to talk about that today, because being a target is never safe. Or the overwhelm that will be expected of you that may maintain that level of responsibility can be scary, if not disorientating. It could be many of these or even more, or others. See, we have so many beliefs about ourselves, and many of these beliefs have a contradictory twin, a counterpart that is the opposite of a belief that we have. This dichotomy is alive and well in our minds, and for good reason. Not all of us believes we're unworthy of good things or believes that all the time. This would paralyze us from doing anything. We wouldn't be able to eat a delicious piece of fruit or spend time with a loved one because those things feel good. And we believe that we didn't deserve to go do that. So there are parts of us that show up for certain situations with these beliefs, and sometimes the contradictory ones show up too. Then it's up to whomever of these beliefs has the most voting power or the more parts aligned with them. Today I'm going to go deep into this, and it may be something that you normally put together around why we don't step into our bigger versions of ourselves. So it may not be something that's familiar to you, but if you could come along for the ride with an open mind just to see where it might fit. Because if there is any resonance for you, whether in your mind or the experience in your body, this discussion may unlock something that has been clouding your ability to step on that bigger stage of yourself. And that would be kind of cool, especially if you have the choice to step on the stage. When you have more choice, even if you decide not to step on it, versus being too paralyzed, scared, or overwhelmed to even make that choice to do it. Okay, so let's get curious together. I love this work. So when I'm noticing something that comes up for me, I get curious. Like when there's a tension, a constriction, an overwhelm, a fear. And this happened recently. And it was a much deeper contradiction, like a contraction in beliefs than I had seen before. I was afraid to get on a bigger stage of myself. I don't mean like doing the show or a speaking series, but self-sovereignty and independence in a way I'd never realized was a constriction before. I had fear going through my body. So then I said, well, what is this fear? So I sat down with that feeling of fear. I like to do this exercise when this happens. And I just tell myself what I'm actually afraid of will happen. Some people like to write it down, but if that's how you like to sort your feelings out or sort your experience out, but I like to talk to myself. So I just started listing off what I was afraid would happen if I took action to move forward. And I kept talking, and I was like, oh my goodness, I feared for my safety. I feared for my security and my livelihood. And then I realized another question I'd love to ask after I let my fear say all it needs to say to be seen, and so I can get a better picture of what this fear is. Because all fear has a different flavor, right? Sometimes it's a fear of survival. Sometimes it's a fear of being seen. Sometimes it's a fear of not being good enough. Those are all different versions of flavors of fear that we can work with in different ways. So I realized the answer to this question. The next question was, what is the age of the version of me that's having these fears? Something you actually need to be quite still for a moment and really have a quiet moment to ask yourself this question. What is the age of me that is most afraid of this? Okay, so I got my age, and now I can work with this because I have something useful. Even if there's a younger version of me who has had this fear starting, helps to take the intensity down. For me to know this, the version of me that has this fear, it helps for me to take the intensity down, to allow for some movement around what I want to do. Because if it's like a 2-year-old or a 5-year-old version of myself, or even a teenager, it doesn't matter. I realize it's not my adult self. There's a younger version of me. So I saw that I was afraid of actually adulting for my parents. Oh my God. It's so interesting because I'm a mother paying for my own life, and I have been for decades. I've been an adult and on my own since my 20s. Yet there's a part of me that was afraid not to be a young child. Can you hear that? Like, there's the adult part of me, and there was this, which is most of me. And then there's a little part of me, a younger me, that was afraid to not be a young child. And I know it sounds crazy and almost like you can't fathom it. And even a little embarrassing. Like, how does a woman of my age and experience have a part of her that still wants to be parented as a young child? Who knew? Well, this is something I actually commonly find with my clients in my practice. You will find these younger versions who are holding on to something because they're afraid to let go. The younger part, not the client. The client definitely wants to let go because that's why they came to me. But that younger version of us is holding on to something. And having done this work for many decades, I know there's always a part or two of us that is holding on to that belief as if it's the truth. That part is stuck in time from when they first took on that belief as the truth. And everything anyone or myself do after that, after we take on that belief as true, that's in order to compensate for that earlier belief. So again, my favorite thing, I got curious. I didn't want to just dismiss this feeling out of disbelief or embarrassment. That's not useful in my situation with fear. If I want to shift my fear, it's just not useful because this experience is valuable, especially if I were to trust that this is coming up for a reason. So my body, my subconscious is ready to let it go. So am I. So let's do this. Okay. So next I felt into this part of me who was afraid of actually having to be an adult, which means being solely responsible for myself, my son, my choices, all of that. It felt as if I did not have a safety net. Like there's no more parent helping the child through falling down and skinning their knee or being left out at school, whatever it may be. There's this childhood experience that can feel good to know there's a parent to help you if you get hurt, stuck, or lost in some way. It's a sense of safety, protection. So no matter if how the parent handles it, it may not be what you preferred they handle it, but it's more about the barrier, that buffer that is between you and what you don't know as a child or that big, scary outside world, like that buffer to kind of catch you. Now, because you don't have to, at that age, take on 100% of your life responsibilities, because an older, more experienced adult is there to help to put some guardrails up for you. And yes, in some cases, those guardrails were demonstrative, shaming, and hurtful, yet they were also there. There's something about a younger part of me that was afraid to give up those guardrails. So no matter how painful or scary those guardrails might be by the parent, they are still a boundary to keep me relatively safe. And children need boundaries. They want them. It gives them a container for which they can rest within, knowing their portion of the world that they can operate in for that stage of their life. And as they grow and get older, as we all did, that container gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until you go out and, life on your own and do your own container for yourself. So then next, I stepped into that younger version of me. I felt what her experience was like when she imagined having to be 100% responsible for her own life. It was incredibly overwhelming because she is too little to have that capacity or ability to take care of herself. This responsibility was too big for any child. So this experience was crippling to my younger self. It made her freeze up and not be able to move. And that's also what my adult self was feeling. It was like a 3-year-old being lost in the woods, needing to fend for themselves. And it was getting dark and incredibly scary, debilitating, and way, way, way too big of a situation for her capacities. I don't know if you've ever felt something like this. It just felt way larger than it seems to your adult self. But it just was huge for this child. So when you're terrified of something that other people just brush past, it's kind of like that. Like, oh my God, I'm afraid to go on this bigger stage, but other people seem to be doing it and having fun time with it. But this younger part of me actually had hold of my experience. And it's funny because I take care of my own child who's 5, and I don't have that problem with him. I don't freeze up or get overwhelmed with how to nurture or raise him. So this experience I was having was not the same part of me that does adult mother well or takes care of our life responsibilities with ease. No, this was another part of me that has not felt safe to grow into her own, to step on that bigger stage of herself. And I thought, okay, I can work with this. I got curious again about something else. What might be the cause of this? There are lots of possible options, but I noticed that I'd always been raised to value family. Put them first. Our family is very important. And there's nothing wrong with that. Yet when a much younger version of myself distorts this belief or this value, to believe that I can only find safety and security within my family dynamic, then that is when the problems start to appear. If this distortion keeps me needing approval or validation from my parents, or if it makes me feel like a child when I'm around my family as an adult, or has me needing to stay within the confines of how they see me versus who I am, then it creates dis-ease, upset, and all sorts of issues in my adult life. So in my understanding of child development and secure attachment, there's a dynamic where if a child didn't get secure attachment, a strong sense of belonging to their family of origin, then these distortions can happen. Where a child collapses their ability to get love and to survive, they collapse that with needing to get approval or safety within the boundaries of what is acceptable to the family. Then the child will shapeshift who they are to be more pleasing or to not be too displeasing to keep themselves within the safety or belonging of the family, even when it's at the denial of who they really are, even when this shapeshifting goes against the truth of who they are. This is when we will take on beliefs of not being worthy, not being deserving, not being good enough or smart enough, to not upset someone in the family dynamic, and to feel like we fit in or belong a bit more. Now, I'm not saying this is anyone's fault. This is just a distortion that starts with childhood, with the child based on their inability to make sense of what's happening around them. A young child of 2 or 5 years old cannot say, wow, my mom really has her grumpy pants on today. She's needing a break from all she's got going on. It's activating her childhood wounds of not feeling loved by her parents. No, a child doesn't have this ability. In fact, many of us adults don't either. Even when we know someone's reaction is more about them than it is about us. In this case, it's easier for the child to make it about themselves. I am too much of this or not enough of this, because when it's about that child, even if it's about the child, then that child has a shot, even if it's a long shot, at controlling the outcome so that their parent can have a better experience and love that child how that child wants to be loved. So they're trying to heal that parent if they're the fault. If I'm at fault, my parent having their grumpy pants on today, then if I'm more pleasing or less displeasing, maybe my parents will take those grumpy pants off and then I can be loved and feel safe. Can you see the distortion? It gets out of whack quickly. And in some family dynamics, as distorted as this sounds, the other members of the family prefer to have that child in this pickle. And it's not because they are mean individuals. It's because they too are trying to find their own sense of belonging in the family. And if they support the current dynamic, then they can belong with the people who do that type of behavior. It's a way for them to belong and get the benefits of feeling safe within the family by being like them. For example, a child of thieves doesn't see their own theft as wrong. They view it as this is how they, the child, belong to their family, how they become of like kind. Now, this is not conscious. It's an unconscious sense of safety that they feel. Even though it's not true safety and it's a distortion, it still works to keep the behavior in place. Knowing this, that younger part of me had no idea how to be in the world outside of this self-fulfilling dynamic. That younger part of me was stuck at an age where she was too young to parent herself, to see what was happening in the overall dynamic, or that it had nothing to do with her. So she stayed at that age because she could get some sense, enough of a sense, even if it was small, of belonging to survive, to not have her safety feel threatened. Now, it worked for her and for those around her because they too were running their own distortions, as we all do, in my opinion, and it keeps these distortions in place. These distortions are there to protect us. In this case, again, it was to keep me safe in a sense of belonging. As screwed up as it sounds, and other people's distortions do the same thing for them. All distortions have a positive intended outcome, even though there are better ways of going about it. Yet when you're at the age when you adopt these strategies, it's hard to see any other way. How do you get this out of the way? How do you get this out? Shift it, right? Well, first, you have to have lots of compassion for yourself and others who run these patterns. They were put there with a positive intention. Second, what I did is I sat with that part of me that was scared, that younger part, and I let her know how old I am now, that I am safe now, that I have more abilities than ever to take care of myself. And here's the key when doing that. I did this in a way that my subconscious reptilian brain can understand it because it doesn't do language. And because it can understand it, it doesn't reject the change I'm trying to instill. And so the integration and the shift I wanted can happen. See, if you try to do this consciously, meaning talking yourself into it, it's going to maybe feel good for a moment, like an affirmation, but you're trying to go through the cerebral cortex to get back to your reptilian brain. And up here, it's not connected directly back here in the way we need it to. And the cerebral cortex is not where the source of your beliefs are, where this belief is running. It's actually back here. And these two parts of your brain operate like they're two different continents. So it won't have the same effect you're hoping to get if you try to talk yourself into it or do affirmations in this way. This whole process that I didn't take more than 15 minutes of me sitting with myself. And now I don't feel confined to that small-sized stage my younger self felt safest on. I have a whole new certainty about where I'm going and clarity about how to get there. And I share this because this is possible for you too. And this is what can happen when you shift those limiting patterns and distorted beliefs that have constricted your free will, like your ability to have choice. Is that really is power, is when you have choice. And your ability to be at ease with yourself in life. And most importantly, your choices to do new things in new ways. It's all revisable. And it's not as hard as you may think. Excuse me. And I'd love to hear what you notice from today's show. I would. And if you'd like, if you go through this, you do this little bit of these steps, and you come up with what happened, what was going on for you from your younger self, please send me a note to yourwealthyself@e e360tvlive.com. I will pull that up so you can see it. There. yourwealthyself@e360tvlive. I'd love to hear about it. It's again, being who I am, I love this kind of work. And if you got something from today's show, please share it. And know, however you're feeling about wanting to get on that bigger stage, however constricted it feels, it's totally normal. And there's just something in the way that you don't have to willpower yourself through. You don't have to push yourself through. You can actually shift this without the struggle. And I want there to be less struggle because there is so much struggle and fear in the world. Let's create more joy and have more ease in our lives. So make sure you tune in next week as we continue to use money as a lens to revise the old beliefs holding us back from having more clarity, more freedom, prosperity, self-worth, appreciation, and daily joy. Whatever is most important to you. I love and adore you. You are incredibly beautiful and precious, just as you are. And please know you are enough right now in this moment and always.